You just won $50 million. 70% of you will be broke within 7 years. Not poorer, broke. As in, worse off than the day before the ticket. And the money isn't even the dangerous part. Think about where you were before all this. A Tuesday morning, probably. The alarm going off at 6:47 because setting it at 6:45 never worked. You always hit snooze twice. The coffee that's never quite hot enough by the time you get to it. The commute that smells like someone else's breakfast and your own quiet frustration. You had a routine. You had a Friday ritual. Maybe a beer with a coworker you actually liked, or a show you watched with someone on the couch, their feet tucked under your thigh. You had a place at the table. Literally, your chair. The one nobody else sat in. You had debt. Credit cards, probably. Maybe a car payment. A rent that went up every year while your raise didn't. You checked your bank account with the kind of caution someone uses to look over a ledge. Quick glance, don't stare. You bought the ticket on impulse. Gas station on the way home. The line was moving slow. You grabbed it mostly to have something to hope for on the drive. That hope cost you $2. What comes next will cost considerably more. You find out on a Wednesday. Not in some cinematic moment with balloons and a check the size of a door. You find out alone, in the parking lot of a grocery store, squinting at your phone under fluorescent light that makes everyone look slightly unwell. You typed in the numbers 3 times because the first 2 didn't seem real. Your hands are doing something strange. Not shaking exactly. Vibrating like a phone on silent. Your chest tightens in a way that feels identical to fear, and for a second you can't tell the difference because your body can't either. Extreme joy and extreme terror activate the same alarm system. You sit in the car for 11 minutes without starting the engine. Then you call the first person you think of, and right there, in that phone call, the first crack appears, so thin you don't even notice it. They scream. They cry. They say we, and something in you goes very, very still. We. You didn't say we, but you already know the negotiation has begun. The first week feels like a costume you're not sure fits. You don't tell everyone immediately. You've heard you're not supposed to. But the ones you do tell start rearranging themselves around you in ways that are almost imperceptible, the way furniture shifts over years, and you only notice when you trip on something that used to be somewhere else. Your brother calls twice in 1 week. Your brother hasn't called twice in 1 month since your grandmother's funeral. You pick up both times. The second call lasts 40 minutes and ends with a number. Not huge, he says, just to help with something small. You don't say no. You don't say yes. You hang up and stare at the wall of the hotel you've been staying in because someone told you not to go home yet, and you realize the wall has no pictures, no marks, no history, and for a moment it feels like your future. Your friends, the real ones, the Tuesday night, share a picture and complain about work ones, don't know what to do with you. You can see it in the texts, the jokes that don't land the same way. The slight pause before someone picks up a bar tab, wondering if you'll offer. The way a dinner invitation now carries an invisible asterisk. You paid for everything last time. Not because you wanted to. Because you didn't know how not to. Because the alternative was watching people you love calculate what they can afford, and you can't unsee what you can now afford. Money doesn't change people. That's the lie they tell you to make it sound better. Money reveals them. It's a floodlight in a room you thought you knew. By the 3rd month, the silence has texture. You moved. Of course you moved. Someone online figured out your name within 6 days of the public announcement, and the letters started coming. Handwritten ones, which somehow feel worse than emails. People describing medical situations in enough detail that you can picture the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic, the specific brand of grief they're selling. You stopped reading them after the 43rd. You stopped counting at 30. The new place is bigger than anything you ever imagined living in. The ceilings are high enough that sound doesn't behave the way it used to. It spreads out and disappears, the way voices do in cathedrals, as if the room itself is too large to hold ordinary human conversation. You have a gym you don't use. A guest room with no guests. A kitchen that looks like the ones in magazines, which means it looks like no one ever actually cooked in it. You order delivery most nights. The app knows your order. That's your most consistent relationship right now. You start to notice something happening with time. Days used to have shape. The commute, the meeting, the lunch break, the commute back, the small negotiations of a shared life. Now the hours are formless. You wake up when you wake up. You eat when you remember. You go to sleep when the silence gets too loud. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much but from having no reason to do anything at all, and you are becoming fluent in it. You think about your old job sometimes. Not because you miss the work, because you miss knowing exactly where you had to be at 9 a.m. and the strange comfort of someone needing you to be there. Here's what nobody puts on the lottery ticket. 70% of jackpot winners are bankrupt within 7 years. Not struggling. Not adjusting. Bankrupt. And the number isn't driven by stupidity or recklessness. It's driven by something more insidious. The complete absence of financial infrastructure around a sum of money that the entire system assumes you already know how to handle. You were never taught this. Nobody was. The average American carries about $6,000 in credit card debt and has less than $1,000 in emergency savings. Then one day you're handed $50 million and expected to suddenly operate like a private equity firm. The lawyers come first, then the financial advisors. Some legitimate, some not. And you will spend years figuring out which is which. A study published in the Review of Economics and Statistics found that lottery winners who received large lump sums were more likely to declare bankruptcy than winners who received annual payments. The money arrives all at once. The wisdom to handle it doesn't come with it. Abraham Shakespeare won $30 million in Florida in 2006. He was murdered by a woman who befriended him specifically to access his money. He told friends in the years before his death that he wished he'd never won. They found his body buried under a concrete slab. He was 43. You're not Abraham Shakespeare. But you've started locking your door twice. Jack Whittaker won $315 million in 2002, the largest single-ticket jackpot in American history at the time. Within 4 years, his granddaughter was dead of a drug overdose. His daughter followed. He'd been robbed multiple times, sued endlessly, and arrested twice. He said publicly, and more than once, that he wished he'd torn up the ticket. These aren't cautionary tales. They're the median outcome, told through specific faces. You think about the ticket on the counter at the gas station, the fluorescent light, the slow line, the impulse that cost $2. You try to remember if you felt something in that moment, some small premonition, some whisper of what was coming. You didn't. You were thinking about what to make for dinner. There's a moment, maybe 4 months in, when you understand something that no amount of money can resolve. You're at a dinner, not with old friends, with new people, the ones who exist in this new world you technically inhabit now. People who've always had money, who speak about it the way you used to speak about rent, as an ambient condition of life, not a crisis or a miracle. You're wearing something expensive that still feels like a costume. You're eating something with a name you had to practice before you arrived. And someone asks you what you do. You open your mouth. Nothing comes. Not because you don't have an answer, but because you realize the answer has always been the same thing. You do what you have to do to pay for the life you're trying to have. That was the architecture of identity for 30-odd years. And now the architecture is gone and you're standing in the rubble of it, trying to describe the building that used to be there. You say something vague. They nod politely. The conversation moves on. The drive home is quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Empty quiet. The kind that comes from a room where all the furniture has been removed. You realize that money was supposed to solve the question of your life. Instead, it dissolved the question entirely and left you standing in a very expensive house with no idea what the question was supposed to be. This is what nobody tells you. Not really. Not with the weight it deserves. Poverty is brutal. Debt is suffocating. Financial insecurity causes measurable physical harm. Elevated cortisol, shortened telomeres, a body that ages faster under the stress of not having enough. None of that is a lie. None of that is minimized here. But meaning is not a financial problem. And you spent your entire life assuming it was. You thought you wanted the house. You wanted what the house was supposed to represent. Safety, arrival, the end of a particular kind of fear. The house is real. The fear just changed addresses. The calls have slowed down, not because people stopped wanting things, because you stopped answering. There are 63 unreturned messages on your phone from the past 90 days. You know the number because you counted them on a night when you couldn't sleep, sitting on the floor of that kitchen that looks like a magazine, eating cereal out of a bowl that costs more than your first month's rent at your first apartment. The spoon is heavy. Good spoons are heavier than you'd expect. You think about who you were before the parking lot, before the vibrating hands, before the word "we" in a phone call that changed the geometry of everything. You were a person with a chair at a table, with a complicated relationship to money that was at least a relationship. Push and pull, scarcity and small victories. The specific pleasure of affording something you'd been planning for. You were part of something. Not special, not extraordinary, but woven in. Into the Tuesday commute, the Friday picture, the birthday dinners where everyone splits the check and someone always does the math wrong and it doesn't matter. You are no longer woven in. You don't know where the thread went. You're not sure it can be found. The system didn't fail you. Let's be precise about that. The lottery runs as designed. The payout structures, the tax implications, the public announcement requirements, they function exactly as intended. The advisors, the lawyers, the family members with their specific and urgent needs, they're all responding rationally to the incentives in front of them. Everyone in this story is doing exactly what you would expect them to do. The only thing nobody designed for was you. The person inside the number. The one who had a chair at a table and a coffee that was never quite hot enough and a life that was small and real and yours. No one put that in the terms and conditions. You're going to be fine. Maybe. Statistically, you have better odds than 70% of the people who've stood where you're standing. If you got the right advice early, if you kept the circle small, if you managed to hold on to something of who you were before the parking lot. But fine is not the same as okay, and okay is not the same as what you thought this was going to be. The picture you carried in your head, the one where the number solved everything, that picture is gone. In its place is something more complicated and less photogenic. The understanding that you were never really waiting for money. You were waiting for the feeling money was supposed to deliver. Security, ease, the sense that you'd finally arrived somewhere worth being. That feeling was never in the ticket. It was never going to be. And the cruelest thing the lottery ever did to you wasn't take your peace or rearrange your relationships or dissolve your identity into a number on a wire transfer. The cruelest thing it did was prove it. You checked the numbers 3 times in a parking lot under fluorescent light, and your body couldn't tell the difference between joy and terror. And it turns out neither could you. The money was real. The arrival was not.